Today we are discussing Alexandra Fuller's, and I always get this backwards, Travel Light, Move Fast. I keep saying it in reverse. And apparently the Multicultural group read her books before I was here.
Yeah.
So I hope you'll
we
mention
read the
that.
first one about don't let the dogs out tonight.
Yeah, don't let's go to the dogs tonight.
Yeah, that's the correct title. Thanks, Jane.
Oh, that was hers. I knew the name. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
So what do you think about the two different books? I searched everywhere and there's I could not find any official questions to ask. So we have to sort of just go off of whatever we want to talk about. But what do you think about the difference between the two books?
Well, what I saw was different is the first book we read about Don't Let's Go to the Dogs Tonight was not so much about her father. And it was about when she was young in, I forget now which African country she's from. But anyway, when she was young there, it was a different time in her life. And there was more emphasis, I think, on her mother and her mother being an alcoholic and depressed and all of that. But we didn't learn much about the father. But yeah, it was an interesting read. You know, I looked up Alexandra Fuller, and she's 48 years old.
Yeah.
So she's not an old gal. She's of course, youth or age is relative, but she's kind of a kid, age of my kids.
And she does seem to write a lot of memoirs, but she also has written nonfiction.
Yeah.
But she seems to write mainly memoirs. And as I understand it, that book was about her childhood. She has another book about her mother specifically.
Something about Under the Forgetfulness Tree.
Yeah, Cocktails Under the Tree of Forgetfulness or something.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I didn't read that.
Yeah, here I have a picture of her, if anyone wants to see.
Yeah, attractive.
I listened to this book on audio, and she was the one who read it, and that was wonderful. I don't know if anybody else listened to the audio, but
yeah, I did too.
I did too.
That made it.
The audio just marvelous, and having lived in that area, I could just visualize the sunrises and the scenes and the noises of the animals and everything. I was just transported back many, many happy years ago. Her language is so beautiful. Yeah. I've marked some spots. I have both the hardcover and I listened to it online. It was just, I love this book.
I didn't love the book. I had the opportunity, I looked her up online. Yeah. I heard her speak at a bookstore. I just put in Alexandra Fuller, and she spoke at the bookstore in DC that's quite famous called Prose and Politics.
Yep.
It's marvelous. And it gave me, I struggled with this book because I remember the first one that I liked it. I did not like this book.
What? Why?
Because I found it really, her life really hard. I found her parents really cavalier. I just found the whole thing really hard to deal with. I agree that she's a wonderful writer. She has you right there. Her descriptions of the hospital in Budapest, her descriptions of, I mean, I agree that she's really profound, but come on, her life was not.
Oh, there's Ruth. Yes.
Ruth.
Welcome.
Hi, Ruth. Good to see you.
Well,
there she is. Oh, and then Arlen. Okay.
And Arlen.
Yeah. Hi, Arlen.
Not hearing us, I guess.
Okay, Trista, you need to understand the harsh climate and environment in which she grew up. The uncertainty as white settlers of what was next. I think that she was so shaped by where she grew up, as were her parents and sister. It didn't surprise me.
I totally agree with you, but I didn't get that perspective until I heard her talk.
Oh, Okay, I got it in the book.
Talk, the book took on a whole new meaning. And she talks in this lecture that she gives, she talks about being with, being raised by an alcoholic mother,
Yep.
a rich alcoholic privileged mother, and a white supremacist father, and how that really affected she and her sister. She also talks in this lecture that you really ought to go to page 213 and read that first, because
Exactly.
that's where you get it, that she's lost her lover, she's lost a child, she's lost her father, and she doesn't speak to her sister. And that gives you a whole new perspective on what this woman's talking about. Because prior to that, I just was like struggling with, oh my God, what's going to happen to her next?
I want to point out that there is an interview on NPR with her, and they have the transcript, which I think is very, very enlightening. And she talks about how she was raised in a culture of white supremacists.
Yes.
And she contrasts it or compares it to, she talks about there's a probably nothing more dramatic than the neuroses of white supremacy, the constant sense that you've been told a massive lie and that it's coming up beneath you anytime or around or above you, you know, in the dark to get you. And so that leads to you knowing fear and anger.
Yes.
And she compares that to what's happening in this country, because she lives in the United States now.
Yeah.
And she says,
Wyoming.
milkier version. But
she talks about the loss of her child in this lecture that she just barely mentions in the book. And she talks about the loss of her child, how it gives her wisdom to go back to being like a child. And that gave me insight into the father. Where I used the word cavalier to begin with, I still think he was, but he lost 3 children. So did his wife. And they were childlike. I mean, the mother thinks she lives in the world of cocktails and white privilege, and the father just is like, well, there's just another adventure around the bend, and it's at the end until it's the end. You know, I mean, they were incredible people that just lived in a world I don't understand.
yeah, I agree. I don't understand it either. It's almost like in the interview on NPR, she talks a lot about pain and how her father sort of embraced the pain, and that made it less, because she says, if you stay in the middle of suffering, you will never find the edge of it.
Right.
And you get the feeling, I got the feeling she wrote all of this to try to, as therapy for her own pain.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Growing up in a family with all those alcoholics, and you know, here's my question. The father grew up in a pretty wealthy British family, from what I understand. They disinherited him. And he left, and he just didn't want to settle down in his life that he was given. So he left, and he lived as the sort of gypsy around different parts of Africa and raised the kids that way. Are they inflicting this pain on themselves, or did he inflict it on the kids? I mean, in some sense, it was kind of a rough childhood to raise kids in it, if you ask me.
Oh, very complex.
Complex is a good word.
Yes.
She talks about in the first book about how she and her sister at age like under 12, I don't know what the exact ages are, but they were taught how to use guns.
Yeah.
And, and when they were taught how to use, it wasn't just like, this is a gun, hold it up and shoot somebody. It was like, this is a gun, learn how to use it. This is where you aim it. You want to kill this person. I mean, that's an incredible thing to teach a child, and to think that was a very normal process.
Yeah.
But those countries were war torn, right?
Yes.
Totally. But
And you contrast that with the mother who had all these books, so many books, and you could barely make it through her bedroom, who was reading classical literature to the girls. And they must have had such a conflicted childhood between the father on the one level and the mother on the other.
But Adele, do you know where the mother got the books?
She stole them.
She stole them. Yeah, I mean, it's absolutely incredible. As soon as another white family was moving out or was forced out, the mother's response was, "Oh, well, it's a shame that the Smiths had to leave, but they had a hell of a collection of books, and I got them all."
Yep.
They sure are
I just think it's
eccentric.
a miracle. I just think it's a miracle that she can even, I don't know. I just think that she and her sister are even alive is dazzling.
That's true.
Yeah. The part that really amazed me was when she, later in the book, when she described being injured and being in the hospital, and her parents didn't visit her.
Nope.
She was there by herself. Do you remember?
Yeah.
I think.
And I think
Yeah,
one
that was like, oh my.
one aunt came to visit, I think.
Ah,
But it could, you have to understand, it could have been a great distance. It might have been 60 or 70 miles away. So I was going to go to an atlas and look. But in any case, they should have, one of them, been there with that child.
yeah, but still, yeah.
Yep. But that wasn't in either of their personalities.
Right. Right.
Adele, your earrings are wonderful. They're Africa, right?
Special for today.
Yeah.
That's great.
Nice.
Their parenting style did not include coddling children. And they would have used the word coddling, I think. Being with your child in the hospital.
Visit them in the hospital.
Yeah.
Coddling.
Yes, I think so.
Yeah, in that NPR, they also mentioned how in her culture, they were taught not to cry because crying made you weak.
Yep.
And she makes that part of that white supremacy
Yes.
background, and that, let's see, you deny pain in yourself and it allows you to deny pain in people all around you, is what she says. So it's all tied up together, but man, what a difficult life. I read that she's, her sister won't talk to her anymore.
Yep.
So, you know, you can't blame the family after all the things she's written about them.
Well, the sister is also a piece of work. Hadn't she been to some place for a rest cure that took 9 months someplace? And that's, and did she have 6 children, I think? Left those with her husband on the Rock. That was the name of their place.
Yeah, was her husband wealthy? Is that what it was? Wasn't?
Probably, I think so.
Yeah. But, you know, the parents that raised these kids, and it's kind of a messed up family, so it's no wonder the kids were all going in different directions.
For me, it was interesting. I don't do audiobooks. This is really the first one I've listened to from beginning to end. And, you know, at first I was really excited about having her doing the reading, but I got pretty tired of when she would speak in her mother's voice or her father's voice. I thought that was pretty unpleasant.
Oh, I like that.
Did you like that? I didn't care for that. But yeah, it was interesting to have her be the reader. And I too, you know, some of the book I thought was confusing because it went back and forth in time, you know. You know, you kind of had to, and if I would have had a hard copy of the book, it would have been a whole different thing. But, you know, you'd get to the chapter and you think, okay, now this is early days, you know, you'd have to kind of rethink of where she was coming from at the time. But yeah, and, you know, like when she, I guess her nickname was Bobo. And the way her mother, she had her mother's voice and her father's voice, I thought, boy, I'd hate to be boo-boo, you know, be called that all the time. But anyway, yeah, it was interesting for me to listen to it and to get to know her a little bit. But I thought the ending, that epilogue, which I almost didn't read, I thought, well, you know, epilogue, what are they going to put in that? Of course, to me, that was the meat of the book. I mean, it was amazingly well written and it was excellent.
The epilogue helped me to understand a lot more about what had happened.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I found that I didn't know enough of the history of that part of Africa And she would mention things without really explaining them.
Mhm.
This revolution or that uprising or a person's name. And had I known more about it, I think I would have gotten more out of it. And I kind of wondered, Adele, whether you knew more of that.
Yes.
Well, I recognize the name. The one I had to look up because I couldn't remember was Oliver Tambo, the airport. I forget which one airport's named after him. And I thought, I know he was somebody. So I had to actually go and research who he was. But yes, the rest I all recognize. We have been near that area. So the highlands there are truly lovely. I was shocked to think they were growing bananas. I didn't realize there was enough moisture, and it probably was a struggle. And he talks about one year they just had to ditch the whole crop because it didn't work. So the banana growing area I think is elsewhere. I don't know why he was trying that crop.
Because he was Fuller. He was Tim Fuller.
He also tried fish, and I gather that didn't really work.
He was Tim Fuller. He was not all connected.
You got that. The chapter I liked the best was him and his computer. And he had to go to the pub.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And to
Blame Bill Gates.
he had to do the finances.
Yeah, well, planned obsolescence.
Yeah.
I love that chapter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One other point she makes in the thing about, she talks a lot about pain in that NPR thing, and she said, one thing Americans don't understand is pain is communal, it's not individual. How does that reflect?
Pain is communal. Interesting.
Well, that
In
makes
other words, you
me
share
because
it
both of her
with the
parents
community.
were in pain for various reasons, and it affected that family. And it's still affecting that family.
It probably also affected all the workers on the farm too.
Everything.
And in Africa, a village is like your family, the whole thing. So I'm thinking their idiosyncrasies probably extended to the whole family, including that one servant who would back out of a room. I don't know what that's supposed to represent, unless maybe that's what that servant thought was the proper, appropriate behavior. There was just a lot of small things in there, and I could see their idiosyncrasies had been passed to everyone around them.
Mhm.
Even in the pub, there was some strange things that happened.
Well, she explains in this lecture that I heard her give that how her mother and father meet is her father went to Kenya so he could see a giraffe.
Yep.
And he met her mother in a very elite white social circle. And I think the servant probably backed out of the room because Nicola told him he had to.
Yep.
Is she still alive? That was one thing I couldn't find.
The mother?
The
Yeah,
mother.
I don't know. I wondered that
She
too.
was really, she upset me greatly. Like every time I had to listen to her, I was just like, I mean, dude, in Budapest with the doctors is just,
Yeah.
And the cats, the animals.
the cats are more important than her husband.
Dogs.
Dogs,
Oh, she
definitely.
had all the little dogs, right?
Yeah,
Right,
dogs.
she refers to, when her husband first has the attack in the restaurant, she refers to the waiter as the spy. Now granted, I think that Budapest at this point in time was communist, but it's like, you got to get these people to help you, Nicola. You're not.
Yeah, but she probably got that from some novel that she had read. She lived in books, in literature. She didn't live on this planet.
Oh, well, she lived in the world of alcohol.
That too.
You got
But
the
she-
feeling these are like the perfect British eccentrics traveling in the colonial areas.
Yep.
Although the
Well, I
mother
would
was
say-
born in Kenya, right?
I just think, well, maybe.
I
With all
never
of
met
the bad qualities.
I have to say, with all the traveling we did in Africa, we never met anybody like the Fullers. That people were more grounded. They were struggling, to be sure, but they were grounded. We didn't meet any Fullers.
Did you meet many British people in the areas where you're traveling, or what nationalities?
British and French, Irish, the whole lot.
Mm-hmm. And
We moved around a lot and traveled and visited.
I remember when
the closest
we were
person,
in.
I just want to carry on that a little bit. The closest person that I can think of to a Fuller was an Irish priest that I met in Cameroon. He might have been a Tim Fuller.
To a point that Ruth made, that it was frustrating that you didn't understand the history, that she just talked about it. I appreciate that frustration, but one of the things that it did for me was I wanted to know. So this woman taught me an awful lot about a world I didn't know, because I wanted to know exactly what she was talking about. And there were only a couple of names that I recognized. Ian Smith was probably about the only one.
what were you going to say, Ruth?
I was grateful to Alexandra Fuller for teaching me, or for wanting, for teaching me to like go and find out what it was. But I understand Ruth's frustration that she just started talking about it. But then again, that was her life. That was where she was from. And I don't think she felt the need to explain it to anybody else.
Ruth.
With regard to the eccentrics that one finds sometimes overseas, it's just a very small thing, but we were in Luxor once and we were on a tour. It was all Americans. We had a guide. We were well taken care of. We were ushered to the dining rooms. We were taken across the river, across the Nile to the Valley of the Kings, and we were never alone. And people were always explaining things to us and so on. And in the lobby of our hotel after breakfast one morning, when we were waiting in a clump, these Americans, to be escorted wherever we were going for that day, this British guy came through the lobby in his khaki shorts and his knee-high socks and good hiking boots and a very sturdy plain knapsack on his back with his load for the day. And he was going off by himself down to the Nile to get on the ferry and go over to the other side and do whatever he wanted to for the day. And I thought, I want to be him. I don't want to be me and where I am. I want to feel free
Maybe it
to do
was
that.
Alexandra's father, Ruth. Maybe.
Yeah.
I think it's helpful if you realize that 19th century and early 20th century, the British Empire extended literally around the world. It fell apart after World War II. But these people are still a product of the mentality of the sun never sets on the British Empire,
Right.
Those sorts of phrases. They were imperialists of the first order, in addition to their many other eccentricities. We look at it with 21st century eyes, but try to imagine, say, 1920s and the British Empire going all around the world. I think those two women, that couple were that.
Mm-hmm.
And
that's what I was seeing. That's what I was seeing with this guy in Luxor. He was just totally at home. It was his.
Yep, it's his world.
Yeah.
And especially in Egypt, that definitely was his world.
Mm-hmm.
And apparently they're going through the same pains that we're going through, growing pains, starting to rip down statues and things in England.
Yes.
So some of the people are regretting the horrors of the colonial empire times.
Justifiably, actually.
I have an author, what they call a presenter on the BBC, and his name is David Ogalusa or Osaluga. I can never remember the spelling direction, but he wrote a book and gave a program called Black and British, which is really, really interesting. It talks about the view of Black people around the world as a result of the British Empire. So we had the book, or it is in our catalog, I think, if anyone's interested, but that's just a side. But he does focus a lot on Africa and the British in Africa. Do you think these people would be different if they came from a different country?
Say
The
French?
Belgians were pretty rough.
Yeah.
Yep. And the French were in a lot of West Africa.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, now
Probably
the
not. Probably not. In fact, our first African assignment was in Cameroon, which was an ex-French territory. And we were there in the first or second year of independence. So the French were still very present. And I remember we went to one place where a man who had clearly been too long in Africa lived. And he said to me something about, I don't care about the color of their skin as long as they like the same wines that I like. And that's his view of race, that they had to have his cultural appreciation. Oh, and the French bread. As long as they could appreciate the French bread and the French wines, they're okay. So that was a cultural type of imperialism in that gentleman's. He'd clearly been too long in Africa. That was my view at the time, when I was 22 years old, mind you.
Does anyone, did anyone feel a comparison of this book to the other book we read, it said in Australia? In the sort of vastness of the area and the community, small communities.
The harshness of the climate, and yes,
and
a little bit.
We have it easy here in so many ways.
The first world is not the same. Yes, you got it.
The difficulties of making a living when you're farming.
Yes.
In some of those climates.
Yeah, you have to try different things, and you have to try science, and you have to read a lot and always be willing to pivot in order to make a living at it, like trying the bananas and trying the fish. And the people in Australia were, they were talking about that larger farm could survive because the people who ran it were constantly changing what they did.
Mm-hmm.
And you're at the whim of the weather.
Yes.
Particularly in Africa, where in Australia, they talked about the wet and the dries. Well, rainy season and dry season also probably occurs in that part of Zambia. I'm not absolutely certain, but I'm going to guess it does.
But none of these people, either the Australians in The Lost Man or the Fullers in Travel Light, Move Fast, in a sense, they were all products of the sun never sets anywhere in the British Empire, but they weren't very nice people to begin with. They weren't very nice people. They weren't.
The families?
Right.
Do you think it might have been environmental?
They all had problems.
Could that have been caused by
those problems brought on because they were a product of the sun never sets? Possibly. Were they a product because of the harshness of the climate they lived in and what they were trying to do in the climates, be farmers? I definitely think that's a yes. So comparing those two books that way, I think that, but I don't think any of them were very nice people.
Adele, what were you going to say?
I think they were all product of their environment, both physical and then in the sense, in the case of the British, I'm not sure about the Australian being product of the sun never sets. They'd been out there many generations, I had the impression. You're right, none of them are nice people. They were inherently flawed all. Aren't we all, though, actually?
But that makes for more interesting reading.
Yeah.
It wouldn't have been a good book if the father had been very straightforward and did his own thing, and the mother had been a normal mother who cared and went to the hospital when her daughter fell off the pony. That didn't make good writing.
Well, it gave her daughter the opportunity to write these memoirs as therapy.
Yes.
That people are interested in reading, that have won her awards.
That's
Yeah.
a good term. This was her therapy for just
And
buttloads
her
of
mother always wanted an author in the family. Her mother wanted, but she got Alexandra. So
And Vanessa would never have written a novel. She couldn't have stayed still long enough to do it.
right.
Was it in the book that I read that that Alexandra's daughters went to visit the family, or was that an interview somewhere?
Oh, really? Oh, okay.
I mixed it all together.
Isn't Alexandra's daughter Sarah? And
Sarah
isn't,
went to
isn't
Africa.
she there in Africa? And
Working on a
mother
PhD.
constantly says how well-mannered Sarah is and how lovely Sarah is. And Alexandra compares and says, well, at least she's getting the children she wanted and her grandchildren.
Yeah, that's
That's
it.
it. Yeah.
It's in the
And they
book.
were impressed that she was working on a PhD.
Right.
That's what the mother valued, though, was that whole show sort of
And
thing.
so,
Show books. She couldn't wait. She couldn't wait till somebody got wiped out and she'd go steal their books. But the mother was just all image.
Do you think so?
Well, she sent her kids to really expensive schools, and
Yeah.
she talked about how they didn't have money, but she had cocktails every night, and she had servants. Yeah, I think the mother was just as messed up as everybody else. Well, obviously.
More so, I think more. She was still living in
but
a
she really loved her dogs.
Yeah.
and her husband in her own way. I think it was a good marriage. Two weirdos found each other.
Mhm.
Did they have trouble staying together? I mean, from what I heard, they were always fighting, but in a compatible way they were fighting. Or didn't the father go live in a different room or something? Where did I
Yeah.
remember that from?
And he lived in at least another part of the room, but I don't think
Which one is that? Donna?
That's not me.
Let's see. I'm learning how to run this thing.
Oh.
Did she mute herself?
Morgan muted
No.
herself.
Seems okay.
Yeah, Morgan is muted, but I'm unmuted right now. So
Okay.
I'll message you privately, Laura, so you can see what you could do.
I can see it now, but I wasn't sure where the sound was coming from. Anyway. So anything else anyone wants to cover on this book?
Yeah,
Well,
go ahead, Jane, and then I want to
okay.
cover.
Well, the interesting thing is, having lived out west, I just can't quite imagine Alexandra living in Wyoming in a yurt. It
Yeah, which she apparently does now, right?
What the heck? Yeah. It just seemed like a most unusual place for this woman to, and apparently her husband, she has good or former husband, she has good relationships with and must be out there for him and for the children. Or how the kids then are what, college age, or the two that the girls?
I think.
Jane,
Yeah.
if you want to understand how she lives in a yurt, Google her name and put / Prose and Politics lecture, and you'll understand how she lives in a yurt.
Okay.
Talks about it a lot in this lecture.
The video she's talking about that's on YouTube.
Yeah. Yes.
Oh, okay. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. It just
But
seems.
still, I mean, she didn't seem to be able to stay married to her husband. She seemed to want to have that adventurous life that her parents taught her to have and move to a different country in a way.
But it seems like she's been in Wyoming a pretty long time.
Yeah.
She's passionate about being an American. And in this lecture that I heard her.
Oh, that's interesting.
She talks about how the best thing about being an American is the freedom of speech.
Yep. Interesting.
Yeah, see, apparently she moved to Wyoming in 1994. So that is, well, she was
Ah,
born
quite
in
a while.
That's a long
1969.
time ago.
Yeah, born in 1969, moved to Wyoming in 1994, and then divorced in 2012.
Okay.
So,
And then in the epilogue, wasn't she in a relationship with somebody and then that broke up?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. She had another companion at the time when her child died, but the father
Yeah.
went down to South America and brought the one who had the seizure, brought him home.
Yeah.
yeah, so she was only in her 25 or so when she came to the United States to live in Wyoming.
Mhm.
Pretty young still. And when did she write her first book?
At least 10 years ago.
Yeah. So she's pretty amazing. So,
Okay,
you
did she
glad
move?
you read this book?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Yes, definitely.
Can I talk
Definitely.
a little bit about her prose? One of the things when you live near the equator, there's no dawn and there's no evening twilight. The sky goes from
Yeah.
dark to light and light to dark. And she describes it. I'm just going to read a paragraph. She writes it so beautifully. There is no gentle dusk, no nautical twilight, no soft evening. You're either ready for it or not. One moment the sky is suffused with a vivid, pulsing sunset. It looks as if it'll go on forever. And the next moment it's black. Nothing prepares you for this sudden darkness of a Southern African night, even if you've never known anything else. It's always as if the light had been smothered rather than gently slid behind the horizon. But it prepares you for certain endings, such as a leap from painted skies to night, by which I mean definite endings. And so I just thought that was so beautifully described what happens when you're on the equator or near the equator. It's just so dramatically different from what we in our northern latitudes experience.
Mm-hmm.
It was a shock to me the first and almost every time. You think, oh, I've got to get prepared. I've got to get the candles out or the lights out because we didn't always have electricity. I've got to be ready. And then I was never ready in time.
And then maybe she's alluding to how that prepared her for like death, the death of a child. I mean, there's
For sudden things. That's what she alludes to there. It's sunset or end of day is so sudden, as are some of the traumatic events of life.
I want to read her other book now. Don't Let's Go to the Dogs Tonight.
Yes, you'll love it. And there's a
Yeah.
third one. I'll look it up and let you know because I've read two others by her.
Okay.
Loved them all.
It was well reviewed and I just never got around to reading it. And I think that's the one where she and her sister are taught to use the rifles.
Yes.
And it's explained that that's for people. Yeah.
Yeah, and she wrote a book about somebody in Wyoming who
Yes.
died at the age of 25. I just can't imagine on an oil rig. I wonder what that story's like when she's not writing a memoir, what things she knows about.
What is that title of that book?
That's called The Short Legend of Colton H. Bryant. She narrates the short life of a Wyoming roughneck who fell to his death at age 25 in February 2006 on an oil rig owned by Patterson UTI Energy. So it's one thing to write a memoir where you are writing from what you know, and that would be a little different. It'd be interesting to see what her style is like. And then Before the Rains Come is about her marriage falling apart.
Well, and then she wrote a fiction book too, right? I think
her first novel was Quiet Until the Thaw, published in 2017.
Yeah, so that's just a few years ago. Interesting.
Yeah, I've written quite a bit. Yeah. Well, anyone have anything else to add? We have maybe 5 minutes left before we need to end.
Laura,
Yes.
Laura, are you gonna, or I don't know who did it last time, but I was able to see the meeting on YouTube. Are you gonna, is that gonna be available?
Yes, we will try and get it up on YouTube for you to watch as soon as we
Okay.
can.
Yeah, Morgan is managing it. She's an expert and she knows how to do all of those things correctly. So thank you, Morgan.
Yay.
Yes.
Morgan.
Thank you, Morgan.
You're welcome.
And she
And
does
I
all
would
the
like
wonderful
to, I would like to say hi to, I'd like to say hi to
But she
Jane.
must be home and has her hair up in rollers or something.
Oh,
It's just a cipher on my screen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm working at the library. I'm just in my cubicle space. It just isn't as exciting as my home space.
Arlen,
Yes,
where
Hi.
are you? Are you in Wisconsin?
I'm here.
You're
I'm
here.
here
Oh,
in Door County.
Here,
oh, good. And you are
Yeah.
too, Donna, right?
I'm,
You're
no,
from-
I'm not gonna make it.
You're not
Oh, is
making
that your?
We're not coming. So
Is that right?
very disappointed, but we're staying safe in, well, of course, we're in one of the worst states, but where we live,
Florida?
Yeah.
we're kind of self-isolating, so.
You're missing
Wanna
all
make
our
the
hot
trip.
weather here, in the 80s.
I know, my friends are telling me. Speaking of friends, I want to say hi, especially to Jane and Kathy and Amanda. So
Yes.
if they can catch this on YouTube, that'd be great.
Yeah.
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 So, Donna, are you in Florida?
Yeah, I'm still in Florida and I'm staying. We're just not making it this year.
Okay.
you don't want to travel?
We didn't want to travel. We didn't want to stay in motels and, you know, and then even Door County people are getting kind of reckless now that the tourists are coming. So anyway.
I feel a little safer here in Door County than I did in Florida, though, I have to say.
Yeah, but you have to get here.
Yeah.
So.
Yes, we did stay in motels, but it was okay. There was nobody there.
Uh-huh.
That's true. Yeah.
Yeah.
definitely much safer here than in Texas.
Is that
Yeah.
right?
Mm.
Oh,
That's
yes.
right. Texas is
definitely.
having a tough time.
Yeah.
Very tough.
I saw the figures though this morning for Door County, and they're now at 49 cases, and
Oh,
about one third of those have been since the 15th of June.
Yep.
So if you look at it in proportion, that's not very good.
yeah.
No.
The 15th
No. Wow. I didn't know that.
That means it was people who were infected after the 1st of June.
Or Memorial Day weekend.
Yeah.
Mhm.
There were 4 yesterday,
Yep.
which,
Mm.
you know, you figure before that they were standing at 39 for a long time.
Long time, yeah.
Yeah.
But
And then
all
40
the new-
for a long time.
The new cases, the deaths are stagnant, and they said the new cases are younger people who are not dying, they're recovering. So that, and there's more treatments now, but it's younger people who are getting it.
Because they take more risks, partly, I think.
That's right.
Yeah.
We are.
Yeah.
Yeah, we don't take risks.
No. I did go to the bookstore this morning though.
Where'd you go, Ruth?
I am going to the pool.
No kidding. I'm not doing that.
You
I'm
are.
not,
No,
I'm not to the pool yet.
The pool, I
Ain't-
believe, is very safe.
The
Because
pool
yeah,
is
you're
pick-
going to the Y?
Yes.
Jane, are you going to the Y?
Yes.
You've been?
Yes.
It's
is
okay?
pick-
I believe it is. I believe it's very safe.
this week the kids are coming back though. The classes are starting. The
No
swim
kids.
team-
They're not
The swim-
having kids.
I think kids aren't going in the pool.
They are starting. They've announced the schedule for youth
Oh.
stuff. And it covers all day beginning at 8:45 in the morning with classes and races and training and one thing and another. And I'm just
You know, Ruth, I'm not sure that's right. I don't think so.
No, It's true.
I don't think
No,
that's
she's
true.
right. Jane, she's right.
The
Classes
swim,
all afternoon with kids. Swim team
They're
all
not
afternoon
having,
with
they're
kids.
not
Yep.
having children's classes.
No,
the pool
all
this year.
afternoon.
Wait,
All
next time
afternoon.
you're there, Jane, look at the rack of schedules, and
Yep.
there's a thing called youth something or other,
Yep.
and it covers. So my husband brought it home, and I looked at that, and I thought, oh my God, this is
Yeah.
terrible.
Well, they're not there in the
All
morning, that's
afternoon.
for sure.
No, but all
there are-
afternoon.
It could, yeah,
Well-
afternoon it could be, but there are no children there in the morning at all, and there won't be. Yeah, it's an interesting, but I feel very safe there.
Well, here in the library, we wear masks all the time. I'm in a room by myself, so I don't have mine on, but in the rest of the library, we wear masks and gloves to touch everything, and we quarantine the books, and we're extremely careful. Spraying down all the carts. So we're trying our best here.
Well, and Laura, so then it's next Monday when people can go into the library, is that correct?
Actually, starting now, people can come in to use the computer, but you have to make an appointment.
Okay.
And in the future, yes, there will be some changes.
Can you
But
come
we
in and
will-
browse? Can you come in and browse for books?
Not yet.
But
Some of the
Monday.
libraries, you can make an appointment. The website has all of the information.
Yeah.
But we require masks.
Starting on the 13th, you're going to be able to come into the Sturgeon Bay branch and browse for a short amount of time, but
Okay.
masked, distanced.
I think they
there's-
have, yeah.
And limited numbers of people will be allowed in at one time.
Well, we're ready, Laura. We are ready.
Yeah.
Come in?
Yes.
Well,
You
good.
know, the books in a bag outside I can see why that was done, but I'm ready to look in the stacks and
Yeah. Well, we all have to do our best to try to,
exactly.
stay
No.
safe. So
Yeah.
we're taking it slowly.
Yeah, but I think that's very smart.
Mhm.
I appreciate all the care you're giving.
Yeah, I think that's great.
Ruth, are
Well,
you in a car? Ruth, are you in your car?
Yes, I'm
Yes,
at the
she-
crossroads.
Okay.
I'm going to go to Arla's house next time and sit on the porch.
Well, come tomorrow too. We're having a program on the Crossroads Heritage Garden tomorrow
Uh-huh.
on Zoom. It's on our calendar, so come and join us.
It's
I don't know if you know,
but I don't think
Nancy
you can see
Goldberg
it.
has been the manager of the garden for a few years now. And
Uh-huh.
she's going to talk about the plan and how they use German style gardening in squares.
Uh-huh.
I think it should be really interesting.
Uh-huh.
Well, I've got
All right,
some
well-
tomatoes growing on my patio from the Heritage Collection at, I guess at the library.
Yes,
Neighbor grew them from seeds, so I'm
nice. Yeah.
doing, that's my gardening. 2 pots.
Well, I think we should wrap it up because, as I said, someone has a meeting scheduled at 2. So thank you all for coming.
Thank you,
Yeah,
Laura.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Laura, and
Thank
I
Morgan,
hope you'll
thank
be able
you
to read
very much.
Celestial Bodies and see us next month.
Great to see you. Bye now.
Bye.
Happily.
I miss you.
Bye.
Yep. Bye-bye. We miss you.
Bye, Florida.